What's up, guys? You are watching Fight Feed, and today I'm going to be giving you my picks and predictions for the upcoming UFC Abu Dhabi fight card that is happening this Saturday, July 26th. Yeah, July 26th. Before I dive into all of my picks for this entire card, I just want to say thank you guys for stopping by Fight Feed. I hope that if you are not subscribed, that you will subscribe because I post a ton of MMA content that will be useful if you are into MMA. You're looking for other creators, you're looking to be entertained. I hope that you enjoyed this content. And if you're also new here, just want to give you a quick rundown. The way that I do my fight predictions, I break down every single fight. I do a ton of research. So I go into not only the tail of the tape, but I also go into the styles makes fights. It's a slide you'll see here soon, breaking down their styles, strengths, weaknesses. I also break down their momentum checks. So it looks at both fighters, what their recent win or loss streak is, the last time they fought, last day they fought, if you will. I used to, previous weeks I've been including the amount of days since they've been in the octagon, but that just proves to be a lot more work. So if you guys do enjoy seeing, when I've posted in my previous fight picks, how many days it's been since that fighter's been in the octagon, let me know and I can reincorporate that. And then finally, I take a look at intangibles and X factors, which could be kind of anything under the sun that you might think of. And then finally, I provide my pick. So without further ado, I want to dive into this fight card. And a quick heads up while I'm pulling up this fight card, the way that I'm going to go through this fight card, guys, is unfortunately it's not in whatever the bout order is because I can't seem to figure out what the actual bout order is. It's already changed a few times because things have been switched around on this card. So what I'm doing is just going through this in the way that I broke it down, at least on my side, but do not take it for what it's worth. The only two fights that you can actually be sure are locked in at the time that they're happening are the co-main event and main event. So every other fight that's in here is kind of mixed around. So apologies if you're expecting it to be a certain way in terms of that bout order. I did not know exactly what that bout order is, but regardless, there's timestamps you guys can refer to. I'm going to go ahead and dive into the picks. So starting us off in terms of my picks and the notes that I have, we've got Almabayev versus Jose Ochoa. So Asu is 31. He's got a 5'4" height, a 65" reach, a 125-pound weight, 21-3 record with a 4-1 record in the UFC. Jose Ochoa, on the other hand, 24, 5'7", 67" reach, 8-1 overall record, and a 1-1 record in the UFC. Okay, looking at styles in this fight, in this matchup, we've got the strengths of Almabayev is that he's a great wrestler, very good at grappling, setting up some chain wrestling. That's kind of his style. Definitely more of a decision-heavy type grappler. However, he has the same percentage of decision wins as he does submission wins. So it's kind of like he either will get that submission or he'll get it, or he'll grind out a decision by just out grappling most of his opponents. Now, some weaknesses that I have for Almabayev is that he's not the greatest striker on the feet, and he took a ton of bad damage in his last fight. So those are some things that I've called out in terms of weaknesses. Jose Ochoa, on the other hand, very talented striker. Also, this guy comes from the shoot to box camp, so he's a well-touted, not only in the striking but also grappling. However, he only does have a blue belt based on the info that I'm seeing online. But I did put that he has a decent ground game. You'll see him throw up a lot of submissions, especially if he does get taken down. His last fight, which was not very long ago, is actually less than a month ago. Or no, it was just over a month ago. And he got taken down twice in that fight, even though he was able to get that win. Now, his weaknesses are just that he's still super young, obviously only 24 years old, and he has a lack of experience in the UFC, but also just in his overall professional career. And then finally, one more weakness, he was taken down twice in his last fight. So those are things to keep in mind as you consider who you're picking in this fight. Now, taking a look at their momentum, Almabayev's coming off of a loss, which was the first loss he's had in a while. He last fought March 1st of 2025. And as you can see, last 4 fights, he lost him in Al Cop. He won the fight prior to Mateus Nicolau, won against Jose Johnson. That guy was like the 6-foot-tall flyweight, if you guys remember him. And then won against TJ Vergara. So Almabayev, although no momentum here really coming off of that loss, he does have that wealth of experience that I feel like Jose Ochoa is still missing in his career. Now, Ochoa, on the other hand, Ochoa is coming off of a 1-fight win streak currently. Just got that win over Cody Durden. Before that, and looking at his last 4 fights, he lost to Loner Kavanaugh, who is like probably one of the most touted prospects at lightweight right now. Or not lightweight, at flyweight. Sorry, guys. And then 2 previous wins over 2 people I do not know. Something Pantoja and something Pereira. So as you can see, Ochoa is still missing a lot of that experience, I think, that you would expect. But nonetheless, he's also jumping in on short notice. So that's just another thing to just throw in there as well. Now, intangibles and X factors. These are pretty important for this fight because I think that is what is pushing me to choose the way I am, and you'll find that out in the next slide here. But looking at Almabayev, he is, I say, the home fighter because although he's not from Abu Dhabi, I have a feeling that, and we've seen this in the past, where Abu Dhabi has some decisions that are very, very questionable, especially when it's in favor of a Muslim fighter. And I hate to say it, but it's just the truth. So just looking at that, I always will usually, if someone's like a Muslim fighter, I usually will assign them as the home fighter, especially in Abu Dhabi. Now, the pressure for Almabayev is pretty big because he is coming off of a bad loss. Even though that loss, he stepped in on short notice, he got tuned up by Manel Kape. He needs to get a win here just to not only, I think, refresh our brains in terms of his skill set, but also get a win to bounce back into that win column. Now, red flags. I've already said this. He took a ton of damage in his last fight. And that type of damage only 4 months ago says to me that he hasn't had a lot of time to truly recover from some of the shots that he was taking. And now he's jumped back into a fight. Some people might be like, oh, 4 months ago, that's a decent amount of time. It's really not, because especially if you have like an 8-week, maybe 10-week fight camp, that's basically 2 months right there. So he's essentially given himself 2 months to recover, even if he did give himself that at all. So that is something to call out, especially because Almabayev is 31. He's not a young whippersnapper like Ochoa anymore, okay? He's 31 years old. I'm 29. I know it's like getting up there in age. Now, Ochoa, on the other hand, he's not the home fighter here. I said for pressure, I don't think there's a lot of pressure. I think that him coming in on short notice, fighting super recently and just jumping in here to fill in, I don't necessarily think there's a ton of pressure, but I think that if he puts the pressure on himself, there is that pressure to get the win, of course. But the only red flags I can think of for him is just that he is coming up on short notice, not coming up, but he's joining this fight on short notice. And I just don't know if he'll be able to keep up with a pace. If Almabayev's pushing a very grappling heavy pace this whole fight, that could be a detriment to Ochoa, given the fact that he is coming in on short notice. Now, one thing I wanted to call out about Ochoa, this guy has this instinct, right? And so what I'm going to say is I'm picking Ochoa to win, guys. And I think that he's going to get the win. And it's mainly because when you compound the aspects of Almabayev coming in, not having a ton of time off between all the damage he just took against Manel Kape, but then you pair that with Jose Ochoa, he has that instinct to, not only find, it's like timing and speed, but it's the instinct to push for a finish when he has his opponents hurt. I feel like he has that, and I think that he's going to be looking to land that shot on Almabayev this entire time. Now, I want to say, guys, if you're looking to make a decision for yourself, you kind of have to weigh the different options here, right? I am taking and I'm putting a lot of stock in the fact that I feel like Almabayev is coming back too soon after, kind of getting his ass whooped. And because of that, I worry about him going up against a guy like Ochoa, who has like an 82% KO rate, which is pretty damn high, especially for this weight class. I feel like Jose Ochoa will find that knockout, but my confidence is not super high in that. I feel like Almabayev could go out there and, put out his game plan and potentially get the win. I think that Ochoa is likely to catch his chin. And even if it doesn't get the KO, he's likely to get a decision. All right, guys, that takes us to our next fight on the card, which is probably not the actual next fight on the card if you're looking at the order, but I digress. We got Davey Grant versus Damon Blackshear. Davey Grant's got this like Green Goblin, Willem Dafoe type vibe. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, the Spider-Man. Okay, so 39 years old for Davey Grant, 5'8", 69-inch reach, 136 pounds was his last weigh-in, 14-7 record with a UFC experience of 7-6. It's crazy that Davey Grant's got a 50-50 record because this guy has like knocked off some really good talent in the UFC, especially lately. Now, Damon Blackshear, 30 years old, 5'10", 72.2 inches in reach. I still don't know why they do the 0.2 shit. A 17-7 record with a 5-3 record in the UFC. So a little bit more experience for Davey Grant. Okay, taking a look at their styles. Davey Grant, guys, strengths is that he's low-key an amazing striker. And I say low-key because I feel like a lot of fans, especially casual fans, don't know about Davey Grant. Davey Grant is that dude on the feet. This guy is constantly moving. Footwork is continuously like side-to-side footwork. He's not always going back, stepping backwards. He's moving side to side quite a bit, constantly switching stances, and he's got this weird style of like, just, it's almost like a herky-jerky type style, but it's very clean at the same time. And what I mean by herky-jerky is like, he's throwing a punch here, he's throwing a lead calf kick there, like, and he's mixing up those attacks, especially with both legs, while switching stances and moving. Like, the guy is nonstop moving. He's never really planted in one spot. And I think that makes him a very tricky customer on the feet, as Lucas would say. Lucas would say. So very good at mixing things up. Now, weaknesses is that he's really solid all around, but I think age is definitely a factor in the weaknesses. And then also something else to call out is most of his losses, 50% of his losses actually, are by submission. So that's something to call out, especially when we look at his opponent in Damon Blackshear. Looking at Damon Blackshear, he's got some strengths. 65% of his wins are by submission. Longer range at the bantamweight division, obviously a 6 foot 0.2 reach. So he's definitely going to be a little bit bigger, 5'10" as well. A solid ground threat, right? Like, this guy, if he gets you to the ground, he has a chance of getting you in some type of submission. Great 1-2 as well. Very good 1-2 down the pipe. Strong combos with the 1-2 there. Now, weaknesses that I have for Damon Blackshear is I feel like his gas tank is a bit questionable, especially in his last fight. He did win his last fight pretty convincingly, but I recall him just getting weathered as this fight went on, and to a point where he was letting his opponent really get back into the fight, just solely off the fact that I feel like he was, running out of gas at the end of his last fight, which just happened in Kansas City. So those are the things I would call out there. Jumping into their momentum. So Davey Grant is coming off of a 1-fight win streak currently. He's last fought on December 14th of 2024, so not too long ago. His last fight was a win over Ramon Tavares. He did lose previous to that to Daniel Marcos. Actually, a lot of people think that should have gone the other way. I actually agree with that as well. And then we have a win over Rafael Assunção and a win over Louis Smolka. Taking a look at Damon Blackshear, 3-fight win streak for Damon Blackshear. He last fought April 26th of 2025. A win over Alatang, a win over Cody Gibson, a win over Cody Stamen, and then a loss to Montel Jackson. Damon Blackshear has been fairly active, guys. Like, this guy's had quite a few fights. I feel like it was yesterday watching him get flatline KO'd by Montel Jackson. It's crazy that he's already picked up 3 wins since then. So that's taking a look at their momentum. Now, intangibles and X factors. Neither guy are the home fighter here, but I would say that Davey Grant needs to stay in this win column given his age. And I think that even if it's not the win column, he needs to have a very competitive performance, because given that he's 39 years old at this weight class, there's always that opportunity that, he goes out there and has a bad performance and potentially, loses his spot in the UFC just based off of that. But I do think Davey Grant's one of those like weird outliers, similar to Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. He just keeps putting on good performances. He beat Tavares in his last fight, who's a very highly touted prospect. The only red flag I really have for Davey Grant, guys, is his age, and that, like, obviously that submission threat from Blackshear, because he has been submitted more times in his career than he has anything else, right? Now, Blackshear, on the other hand, he's on a 3-fight win streak, so he does need a good win here to just continue, staking his claim at, title contention in the future. So he wants to keep moving up in the division. Now, red flags is, he's going to have to travel to Abu Dhabi. So that's a little bit of a ways away from our neck of the woods of America, and potentially his gas tank, especially against a guy who's constantly moving in Davey Grant. Now, guys, the pick on this one, I went with Davey Grant. I'm going with Davey. The thing is, though, I went back and forth. I had Davey Grant, and then I had Damon Blackshear, and then I put Davey Grant again. So, guys, I don't know how this is going to go. I feel like if Davey Grant goes out there and does what Davey Grant does, where he makes it a scrappy performance, he's crispy on the feet, landing his shots, moving out of the way of the attacks that are coming from Blackshear. The thing that Davey Grant's going to have against him here is he's down on the reach side of things a little bit. So he's going to have to try to, get close, which I don't think is an issue for Davey Grant. This guy moves very well on the feet, and he mixes his attacks up very well too. So I feel like he'll have no problem doing that. But I do think that when I've thought about Blackshear getting a win here, it's solely like thinking of Blackshear just getting him in a dominant ground position and just getting a submission. I don't really see Davey Grant being like just grappled for the entire fight with like zero control time. Ultimately, guys, I think Davey Grant will probably pull off a decision, but could potentially get a TKO. Confidence is a 3 out of 5. The next fight on the card, we've got Mohammad Yahya versus Stephen Nguyen. It's so funny when people say that. I always want to say like Nguyen, but it's not. That's not how you say it. Now, looking at these guys, Mohammad Yahya, 31 years old, 5'9", 73-inch reach, fighting at 155 pounds previously, and now he's cutting to 145. 12-5 record with an 0-2 UFC experience. Now, Steven, on the other hand, 32 years old, 5'11", 73-inch reach, 5'11" at featherweight is pretty tall. 9-2 record with an 0-1 record in the UFC. He did have a very good showing, though, in his last fight. I mean, it was scrappy, but they went back and forth, and that was a bit of a war. Looking at their styles, so Mohammad Yahya, not much to write home about here, guys. Like, he's just a striker, really, with 57% of his wins by KO. I have to say, after rewatching his last fight where Cal Fernandez just blicked his ass, he's got a lot of weaknesses, guys. Like, he looks so plotty on the feet, especially as a 155er or now a 145er. It's even worse. But in his last fight, dude, he was so plotty on the feet. His legs were there for the taking in terms of just being kicked off by Fernandez. And then also very poor defense on the feet as well. Like, his hands were there, like not even close to his face. They were like down here. He needs to be more Ricky Bobby, get him up, get him up, get him up, get him up. And he just had him down here, was getting caught, had no head movement. Like, I really, guys, I hate to rag on the guy, but like, I just was not very impressed, especially after rewatching some tape here. Not very impressed with his performance in his last fight and just his performances overall. Now, Steven, on the other hand, very well-rounded game. A lot different than Mohammad. He's moving constantly. Very quick and decisive movements that he has when he's on the feet. Great leg kicks as well. That right there was a red flag for Mohammad. Right when I saw and rewatched some of the Nguyen fights, he had a lot of great leg kicks against his opponents. What I would say weaknesses are for Nguyen is he just lacks some skill in the pocket, I think. He gets caught a lot when he's in these pocket exchanges. And that could have been because of the style matchup in his last fight, but that is just something to call out. Now, looking at their momentum, Mohammad Yahya, 2 losses. Stephen Nguyen, 1 loss. Mohammad last fought on August 3rd, 2024. It seems like this guy only fights in Abu Dhabi. His last 4 fights, Cal Fernandez, lost to Trevor Peek, and then 2 wins on the regional scene. Then Steven, on the other hand, last fought March 23rd of 2024. So he's been out for a little bit here. He had a loss to Jarno Aarons. That's the close fight that he had. He had a win over AJ Cunningham, and then I have 2 regional wins for him as well. Intangibles and X factors. Mohammad Yahya is the home fighter. He actually is the home fighter. Like, he literally lives in Abu Dhabi. I think his name is like the UAE Destroyer or some shit. Pressure. 0-2 in the UFC at home as well. Embarrassing showing in his last fight. He needs to go out there and like change the narrative, I think, that is surrounding his name. Because I think right now a lot of people don't have big belief in his game at this time. Some red flags is just like he's not good at dealing with leg kicks or movement. And so I think you're going up against a guy who's a little bit bigger, has faster movement, has great leg kicks. And then another variable here is Mohammad is moving to featherweight. So guys, we could see, maybe Muhammad Yahya goes out there and has this like otherworldly strength for the weight class, but I don't see that happening. Now, Steven, on the other hand, not the home fighter. He needs a win to just build momentum. He has that one loss that he's coming off of. He hasn't fought in a while. And his last fight, he was hit a lot by a guy I would consider a taller fighter. And Muhammad Yahya is pretty close in size to Steven Nguyen. So those are the only things I had to call out for Steven. I don't know if you guys can tell, but I'm definitely picking Steven in this fight. I feel like Steven's movement, leg kicks, faster striking, I think those are all going to play advantageous for him. And I could see him getting a KO in this, guys. Muhammad Yahya got dropped in his last fight, and he really didn't look that great. So, yeah, I'm thinking that Steven gets it with a KO, and I'm thinking pretty highly, like 4 out of 5. Next fight on the card, we got Martin Buday versus Marcus Buchecha. Martin Buday, 33 years old, 6'4", 77-inch reach, 15-2 record with a 6-1 record in the UFC. So very good record in the UFC. He's only lost to Shamil Gaziev so far. Marcus Buchecha, 37 years old, 35 years old, sorry, not 37. 6'3", 80-inch reach, 5-1 record, 0-0 in the UFC. Styles makes fights, baby. Look at this. Martin Buday, strengths. Great boxing from Martin Buday. I think that says 40% of his wins are by KO. Untested against a true grappler, though. So it's not supposed to be a strength, by the way. That's supposed to be a weakness. What I would say in the weaknesses, too, is he gets hit a lot in fights and takes some unnecessary damage. So in his last fight, he fought Salty Balziev. And Salty Balziev was like 215 pounds soaking wet in that fight. Martin Buday was 265. So Salty Balziev was actually teeing off on Martin Buday for a moment, but then Martin Buday just like kind of ate everything and then was landing the heavier shots because he's like a true heavyweight. Salty Balziev was just kind of coming in on short notice. So I felt like Buday took a ton of damage in that fight that he probably didn't need to take because he's the bigger man and could have probably just been a bit more economical with his approach. But regardless, he got the win. It was a good win. Now, Marcus Buchecha, on the other hand, very strong grappler. 80% of his wins are by sub and 100% finish rate. Now, take the 80% and the 100% with a grain of salt, guys, because he only has 6 fights. So like 80%, I think, is like 5 of his wins are by submission, or 4 of them, because he's 5-1. So 4 of his wins are by submission, basically, and 1 of them is basically how I would put it. And he has a 100% finish rate. So it's either decision. Or no, it's either submission or KO for him, not any decisions here. Then weaknesses for Marcus, limited experience, only 6 pro fights, and he is the older fighter. So that is a bit worrying, but I guess that age, guys, at 35, not necessarily a huge factor when you're talking heavyweights. Momentum check. So looking at these guys, Martin Buday is coming off 2 wins. He last fought April 5th of 2025. His last fight was against Salty Balziev, as I said. It's actually Salty, I think it's like Baldiev. I don't know, but I call him Salty Balziev. He has a win over Andrei Arlovsky, a loss to Shamil Gaziev, and a win over Josh Parisian. Marcus Buchecha last fought November 17th of 2024. He won over, dude, this guy's name is, I'm not even kidding you when I say this. It's Amiri Alakbali. I think basically when they said his name, when I actually watched that fight between Buchecha and him, and it sounded like Allah Akbar, but it's like Amiri Allah Akbar. I don't know, guys. That's how I pronounce it anyways. He has a win over him, a loss to Umar Kane. Don't know who that is really. A win over Grushenko and a win over Carson. These are guys all from one championship. So nothing really to write home about there. Okay, intangibles and X factors. So neither guy I would say is like the home fighter per se. The pressure for Martin Buday is, he wants to keep this win streak alive and beat out the newcomer. He has not, in my opinion, fought a grappler that has the pedigree of grappling that Marcus Buchecha has. I had it on another slide, 137 and 13 in grappling, in professional grappling. That's his record. So this guy has 151 grappling matches in his, career as a grappler. So when we talk about like the pedigree and experience, like Martin Buday has not fought anybody, especially in the UFC, with anywhere near that type of grappling. Now, something I want to add though, Martin Buday trains with Tom Aspinall and Tom Aspinall's dad, who are both black belts in jiu-jitsu in and of themselves. So he is getting some good looks from a training perspective. I just don't know if any of them are at that grappling level that Buchecha carries. Now, Buchecha, he has a lot of pressure because he is the debut fighter. Marcus Buchecha does have pressure here because he is debuting in the UFC here. So I think he's going to want to go out there and get a W. Red flags for me are just very limited experience. I have to say, guys, this fight card is just full of, like, honestly, hard decisions, in my opinion. Like, I was wrestling over a lot of this shit. I'll say, I'm going Marcus Buchecha solely off the fact that when I watched him fight a guy in that Amir Alakbari, I feel like he, not only was Alakbari kind of a similar build to Martin Buday, like a big dude, once he got him down, which first of all, it didn't take very long. He got him down rather quickly. And once he got him down, he was like a fly on shit. You couldn't get him off. So what I would say is there's a great chance Martin Buday gets the win, guys, because Martin Buday has that boxing. He has experience. I just feel like Marcus Buchecha is going to have such a strong grappling advantage that he will likely get Martin Buday in a precarious position rather quickly and probably get a submission. But like I said, it could happen where Martin Buday actually, completely nullifies that, stops takedowns, and, wins the fight his own way. So take that for what it's worth. My confidence level is a 3 out of 5. But like I said, I have a note here that Buday still might have a sneaky way of finding a win here, guys. All right. The next fight on the card, we got Ibo Aslan versus Billy Elekana. Billy Boy. Now, Ibo Aslan is 29 years old, 6'3", 77.5-inch reach, 14-2 record, 2-1 record in the UFC. Billy Elekana, on the other hand, 30 years old, 6'2", 77-inch reach, 7-2 record with an 0-1 record in the UFC. Taking a look at these guys' styles. So, Aslan, very strong boxing, a 100% finish rate, all by KO. Very good hands on this boy. He can knock these motherfuckers out. Weaknesses is that he can be out-grappled and submitted rather easily. We kind of saw that in his last fight against Ian Cutelaba. Now, Billy Elekana, on the other hand, kind of like a Max Holloway at light heavyweight almost. Like I think he's definitely a little bit Hawaiian. Good grappling from Billy Elekana. Actually, what I would say for him, he's a very tricky southpaw type striker where he has fast hands, great setups on the feet. Like in his last fight, he threw like a 1-2 head kick on Bogdan Guskov pretty early on in the fight, but also great entries when he goes for takedowns. Okay, so listen to that piece. Great entries when he goes for takedowns and good success with those takedowns. So take that for what it's worth. Weaknesses for him, he's still pretty green in his career. Obviously, only 9 professional fights overall. But, really, Ibo Aslan's not much ahead, only 5 more fights. I guess that is a lot when you consider Billy only has 9. Taking a look at the momentum. So Ibo and Billy are both coming off of a loss. Ibo last fought on February 22nd, 2025, and he lost to Ian Cutelaba in that fight. Now, the fights before that, he had a win over Rafael, I don't know what that motherfucker's last name is, but a win over Rafael something, and then a win over Anton Chirkalj, who actually had a win over Ibo previously, choked him out, and then a win over I don't even know that dude's name. We're just going to move on because he's a regional guy. Billy Elekana, on the other hand, last fought on January 18th. That was the Islam Makhachev fight card. Last 4 fights, he lost to Bogdan Guskov, but I would say he had a great showing against Bogdan and was coming in on short notice for that fight. Before that, win over Jarrell Simmons, a win over Chuck Campbell, and a loss to a Daniel Compton. Intangibles and X factors. So taking a look at who's the home fighter here, I have Ibo as Ibo is like more of a home fighter than Billy Elekana, but I don't think either one is considered a home fighter here. Unless Ibo is Muslim, then yeah. Anyways, Ibo needs a bounce back win, in my opinion. He had a good start to his UFC career, but red flags, I would say, just did not deal with the grappling he did not deal well with that at all, guys. Like, he got taken down and pretty much submitted with ease if you go rewatch that fight. And I think with that, something that worries me about Ebo as well is like if he doesn't land that KO shot, like he has a hard time of like getting the W, in my opinion. Like he's got to KO this guy based on his own record. Like, yeah, his record proves that he's good at getting finishes, but he has to get a finish. He has to get a KO. Billy Khan, on the other hand, not the home fighter. He does have some pressure, though. He's going to want to get a win in the UFC, even though he had a good showing against Guskov. Red flags are just limited XP so far. And then also like gas tank. I know the last fight is not a good indicator of his gas tank because it was a short notice fight. But we just haven't seen him in the UFC, like a full fight in the UFC yet where he had a full camp. So it begs the question of if he'll gas out or not against an Ebo Aslan. Next, guys, you know what? I'm in the lead right now on my pick tracker, and I'm feeling really like, I don't know, as MMA Joey would say, the dogs are barking this weekend, boys. The dogs are barking. Because I've got a couple underdogs on here, I think. I'm picking Billy Boy, Elekana, guys. I think Billy Boy, what I like about Billy Boy is he's a very scrappy type fighter on the feet. He went up against Bogdan Guskov, who's got power in his hands. He didn't get chinned. He ate everything that was coming his way, but he was also very good about mixing up those attacks on the feet and on the ground. And I feel like, given the fact that Aslan had such issue with Cutelaba not too long ago, I mean, we're talking that was 5 months ago, I feel like Billy Boy will be able to find an entry for a takedown and then be scrappy with those submission threats that he always throws up and potentially catch Aslan in one of those submission threats and then ultimately get the job done by submission is what I'm thinking. But yeah, guys, this could also very well go the way that I think sports books expect it to, where Aslan gets a fucking round 1 KO. So like my confidence level is not very high on this pick, but take it for what it's worth. I tried to do some research. I'm not trying to be edgy. I just think when I see how Aslan handled being taken down in his last fight, I worry a lot about him up against a Billy Elekana who's good at finding those entries and then also attacking those submissions very quickly. The next fight on the card, Muslim Salikhov versus Carlos Leal. Salikhov, 41 years old, 5'11", 70-inch reach, 21-5 record with an 8-4 record in the UFC. Leal, 31, 5'11", 72-inch reach, 22-6 record with a 1-1 record in the UFC. He should be 23-5, and he should be 2-0 in the UFC, in my honest opinion. Looking at their styles, Salikhov is a great striker, very well-touted striker, great at mixing up different spinning attacks, has a whole wide arsenal of like different kicks, whether it be the spinning heel kick, a spinning wheel kick, just mixes up those attacks quite a bit on the feet. 62% of his wins are by KO. Some weaknesses for Salikhov is grappling, of course, also his gas tank, and then also I would say he has a very open guard because he relies heavily on a karate type style and stance, which leaves him open to eat a lot of damage on the feet. Now, Leal, on the other hand, he is a marauder. That's a strength of his. Joe Rogan said it as well. He's never been KO'd. 52% of his wins are by KO. And he just seems to be this guy that's like a very pressure-oriented fighter, doesn't seem to get tired, and just wilts his opponents. A weakness, I said, is that he should be 2-0 in the UFC, but I think that, now I don't blame him fully for this because I do think if we're to look for an example where someone was gifted a decision, it was Renat Faradinkinov, or how do you say his last name? Faratenkinov. I don't know how you say his last name, but Renat got a decision win over Leal on the fight card, the Abu Dhabi fight card that happened in October. And in my opinion, and in a lot of people's opinions, he was not even close to winning that fight. It should not have gone that way. So yeah. But what I would say there is Leal, I think, could have that opportunity here because like Salikhov is obviously also a Muslim fighting in this area. And so it's like that could still be a factor, and it's a weakness in my opinion. Now, looking at momentum, Salikhov's coming off of 2 wins, which is interesting, especially at his age. He last fought November 23rd of 2024. He got a pretty crazy highlight reel KO over Kenan Song, and then a split decision win over Santiago Ponzinibbio before that. and then a loss to Randy Brown and a loss to Nicholas Dalby. Leal, on the other hand, coming off of a one-fight win streak, last fought March 8th of 2025, won over Alex Morono, got a KO. He lost, but that's that fight I was talking about, guys, to Renat, which I think should have been a win. And then 2 wins before that over a few guys that are in the regional scene. Jumping down to intangibles and the X factors. So Salikhov, I said, is the home fighter. Pressure, 41 years old. So not only, he definitely will want a win, but what he needs is to have a competitive showing. Because I feel like when you're at this age and don't have a competitive showing, Dana White will be like, yeah, that kid's done. He's retiring. So that's a red flag that I would call out because I just feel like 41 years old, especially at welterweight, there's been one guy to really do it. It's Wonder Boy. Well, it's interesting because Salikhov has some success here too, but I think that, 41 years old, every single day that goes by, even from like today to Saturday when they're fighting, he's losing percentage points on his longevity meter. Now, Leal, on the other hand, he's not the home fighter. Pressure is that he just needs to keep building wins. He got really robbed on his entry to the UFC, but he got a great win in his last fight, and so I think he just needs to keep moving from that. Guys, my pick is Carlos Leal. I just feel like he's a super solid all-around fighter. I feel like he is going to have Salikhov on the back foot, and he's going to hurt him and get a KO. I think that the KO could come in round 1, but I feel like round 2 is more realistic. I'm 4 out of 5 in my confidence on this. The next fight, we got Amanda Ribas versus Tabatha, the baby shark Ricci. Now, Amanda Ribas, 31 years old, 5'3", 66-inch reach, 12-6 record with a 7-5 record in the UFC. Tabatha Ricci, 30 years old, 5'1", 61-inch reach, 11-3 record with a 6-3 record in the UFC. Their styles, Amanda, I don't know why it says Amans. It should be Amanda. So Amanda Ribas, she's got a solid game all around. I would say she's more of like an outside kickboxer, looking to set up her strikes on the outside. Willing to take it to the ground though, if she needs to. She has a little bit of a ground threat, but I would say the biggest thing that she has a strength is even if it gets scrappy on the feet, she's looking to stand and bang. So that's a really good component to her game. She does have that dog. We saw her go against Pinheiro. Pinheiro hit her with a lot of big shots, and she ended up KOing Pinheiro in the 3rd round. So huge win there. Weaknesses is that I think at times Amanda Ribas, especially in the pocket, she leaves herself open for a lot of counter shots and gets caught on the feet. But then, also at the same time, I think she's found success there too. It just depends on who she's going up against. Tabatha Ricci, on the other hand, strengths for her is she's got a solid gas tank and she's got a constant pressure style that I think can really melt a lot of opponents and a well-rounded game as well. So you can kind of mix it up where she needs to. Some weaknesses for Tabatha is that she kind of has like one way of winning a fight, which most of her wins come by decision just based off of her pushing the opponent back against the cage and just controlling the opponent. Not a very big finisher by any stretch of the imagination. Jumping into the momentum. So both ladies are having some losses. Amanda Ribas coming off 2 losses. She last fought on January 11th, 2025. Lost to Mackenzie Dern, lost to Rose Namajunas before that. And then, she had that win over Luana Pinheiro, and then a loss to Macy Barber. So given all of that, what I would say here is, she's got a little bit, she's coming off a couple losses, but they're to good opponents, okay? Now, Tabatha Ricci's coming off of a loss to Yan Xiaonan. She last fought on November 23rd, 2024. And before that, had a win over Angela Hill, a win over Tisha Pennington, and a loss before that to Lupi Godinez. So, intangibles and X factors. Neither lady here is the home fighter. The pressure, I think, for Amanda Ribas is that she needs a win so she can break this skid and also not go on a 3-fight skid. Red flags, she's open quite a bit on the feet. So that is something that I worry about. Not so much with Tabatha, getting like a KO shot, but more so Tabatha just kind of controlling the pace, catching her with things and then building success off of that. Now, Tabatha, on the other hand, she needs to bounce back from her loss that she just previously had. She did not look great in her last fight. She looked like she was really trying so hard to, apply that pressure, and it wasn't working for her. And I think when it wasn't working for her, that is what's, I think leaning me towards my pick, which you'll see in just a second. One variable I have, though, is that Tabatha Ricci is dating Callum Walsh, who is a very talented, undefeated boxer. I think he's undefeated. That is something that I want to call out because I have to imagine, knowing that, with my girlfriend, you guys have seen how I think naturally she's gotten into UFC because I'm into it. And not so much MMA, but definitely UFC. I watch the other shows, she does not. But what I mean by that is I feel like because Callum Walsh has that repertoire with boxing, it could be that he is absolutely working with her, training her, teaching her things, which could in turn make Tabatha Ricci kind of a bit of like a decent, I think she is an underdog. So that could give her a little bit of a leg up here, if you will, because she might have a little bit better boxing come this time around. But I mean, last fight she was dating him too, and she didn't look very good. So where I'm headed, guys, Amanda Ribas. I think that Amanda Ribas is just a little bit bigger than Tabatha Ricci. She's got a 5-inch reach advantage too. And because Amanda likes to keep things on the outside and land, from the outer angles, I feel like Amanda's just going to do that and hopefully, use her footwork to get out of that pressure that is coming her way from Tabatha. I think that this is likely to go to decision. Confidence is 3 out of 5. Next fight on the card, we got Nikita Krylov versus Bogdan Guskov. Dude, Bogdan Guskov, he looks like, was there like an albino character in Game of Thrones that like wore like the fucking, I think they wore like capes, not capes, but like fucking hell, man. They wore some type of jumper, and it was like, sorry guys, I haven't watched Game of Thrones in a couple years. They were like the little fucking guys that I think when Cersei was put under the, she was put in the prison or whatever. Maybe I'm just confusing that with something completely different. Guy looks very terrifying anyway. Nikita Krylov, 33 years old, 6'3", 77.5-inch reach, a 30-10 record with 11-8 record in the UFC. Lots of XP for this guy. Now, Bogdan, 32 years old, 6'3", 76-inch reach, 17-3 record, a 3-1 record in the UFC. Looking at these guys' styles. So Nikita Krylov, great all-around game, very good with his submission threats. As you can see, 53% of his wins by sub, 40% of his wins are by KO. So he mixes it up quite a bit. Tons of UFC experience. A weakness for Nikita Krylov. Not only was there a lack of activity in the last few years from him, but he is coming off of one of the worst KOs I've seen in recent history. I actually did a breakdown, guys, if you're ever curious about that knockout and want to see, like, I did a whole breakdown of Dominic Reyes, pullback left counter that he landed on Nikita Krylov. And something I'm proud of as a fan, I literally picked Dominic Reyes to get that win because I saw Nikita Krylov's fights. He rushes in, and I'm like, you're rushing in against the Dominic Reyes with a straight pull counter, one of the best pull counters in the UFC and especially in this division. I just knew like Dom's going to catch him. And dude, it is exactly what happened. I was so happy that I was able to predict that. That's what happens when you nerd out about this shit. Now, Bogdan, on the other hand, strengths is that he's got 82% of his wins by KO. And this is not a, 82% when you only have 6, right? You got 5 wins by KO. This guy's got 17 wins. So I think he has 16 wins by KO, which that is impressive. And then looking at his other stuff, he's got 18% of his wins by sub. So I think his only other win was by sub. Yeah, I don't know if he has any decisions. He might have a 100% finish rate. The weakness is that he could be open for takedowns. I think when you watch his fight against Billy Elekana, he got taken down almost immediately. He did get the win in that fight, but the fact that he's open for takedowns is just a bit worrisome against a guy like Nikita Krylov. Now, momentum check. Nikita's coming off of a 1-loss streak here. Last fought 4-12-25, where he lost to Dominic Reyes, as I just aforementioned, if you will. And then you have Ryan Spann. He got a win over Volkan Ozdemir, and a win over Alexander Gustafsson. Now, keep in mind, a lot of these wins that have happened, guys, these happened like several years ago at this point. Nikita Krylov had an entire year and a half layoff before he fought Dominic Reyes, maybe 2-year layoff. Bogdan Guskov last fought on January 18th of 25, win over Billy Elekana. He had a win over Ryan Spann before that, and then a win over Zach Pauga before that. He did lose his UFC debut to Volkan Ozdemir. So a little bit of MMA math, you might just go Krylov, right? That's how people do their things, right? Intangibles and X factors for these guys. So Nikita Krylov, he needs a bounce back win. Not a lot of activity, kind of comes back, gets slumped out in the first round. Big red flag for me, guys. He got KO'd horribly only 3 months ago, which, going back to my earlier point on Jose Ochoa versus Almabayev, you fought 3 months ago, which means you were back into a camp almost immediately after that fight. Because if this fight was signed in May, I mean, he's been in a camp, which means how much time does your brain get to heal from the damage you took in? That's a big worry for me, guys. Now, Bogdan Guskov, pressure for him is just, there's not a ton of pressure, but he's going to want to get a win. He's going to want to keep building on a win streak here in the UFC. And so I think that is a bit of pressure for him to get that win. Red flag is just a lack of UFC XP. Like, he has a lot of finishes and stuff, but like I said previously, it's over guys that are in other organizations that might not stand up to that caliber of the UFC. So just a lack of UFC experience. But guys, I do firmly believe, like, Alex Pereira might be one of the only use cases, if you will, where he came back after a brutal KO in July. It's crazy, from April to July. Maybe I should have picked out differently, and didn't get KO'd again. But I am picking Guskov. I think that Guskov, the way he fights, the marauder style, the KO shots, he is going to try and hurt Krylov very badly. And I feel like Guskov, like I said here, he's brutal. He's looking for a KO. I got a 4 out of 5 confidence. When you consider the fact that Krylov doesn't have good defense on his feet, he does not have a high guard. He has his face wide open for whatever Guskov's trying to land. I just think Guskov's going to land, and it's going to be brutal. So that's my opinion. Next fight on the card, Sharabutdin Magomedov versus Marc-Andrê Barrĩautt. So Sharabutdin, 31 years old, 6'2". He's the Pirate, 73-inch reach, 15-1 record, 4-1 in the UFC. This is the Pirate who comes to all the other shores and takes everything, but only the Abu Dhabi shores, because he can fight anywhere else. Now, Marc-Andrê Barrĩautt, on the other hand, 35 years old, 6'1", 74-inch reach, 17-9 record with a 6-8 record in the UFC. So, looking at these guys' styles, Sharabutdin, an amazing kickboxer. 80% of his wins are by KO. Very, very talented on the feet. And, dude, the way that he can use his feet like his hands is crazy. Like, he throws kicks like guys throw punch combinations. So, that is really fun to watch. He's always a great fight. Like, it's great to watch him fight. He does go for finishes too, but his last fight, I think, MVP has a style that's so nuanced and so, what's the word I'm looking for? So proven, I guess. Like, I don't even know. I just think MVP style, guys, is like Ian Gary, right? He goes up against Ian Gary. Ian Gary was like, I'm going to style on it. I'm going to punch the mouth off him. And then he got his ass whooped so bad that he had to just like basically lay and pray as the fight went on. And Ian Gary's a very good striker. So I think that when you consider that, and then, seeing how MVP went out there against Sharabutdin, that MVP's style is like so good to a point where it makes other guys who are also very good strikers look different. Weaknesses, though, for Sharabutdin is that I don't think he does that well with opponents who mix up their attacks. Like, in some of his fights, he's gotten like the late finish, right? Like, he got a late finish against like a short notice guy on in one of his recent fights. And that guy was kind of having success by mixing things up, getting him in the clinch, just mixing things up on the feet. And so I think he has some weaknesses there. And then he also has just very short reach for his arms. He is 6'2", but I think his reach is his reach is exactly what his height is. So not a huge deal, but like not very long arms, especially at middleweight when you consider some of the other opponents. Now, Marc-Andrê Barrĩaut's strengths, he's got good stand-up, good boxing, good clinch work, can really get stuff happening against the cage. 65% of his wins are by KO. So he's going to favor a fight that's on the feet. Weaknesses for him is that he also lacks defense on the feet. I think that his chin is also questionable. I mean, I actually picked against Barrĩautt in his last fight. And when he I hope Bruno Silva's retired. He beat the dog shit out of Bruno Silva, knocked his ass the fuck out. So I bet against Barrĩautt, though, because of the KOs that he's suffered in his fights before that. So let's just jump down to momentum check, because that, guys, I'm like trying to think of and remember what fights I was talking about in some of these. Anyways, Sharabutdin is 1-loss streak. Last fought February 1st, 2025. Lost to Michael Venom Page. He got a win over Armin Petrosian with the double spinning back fist, one of the coolest KOs that we've all seen. Loved it. A win over Michael Oleksiejczuk. So I think that was another fight where it's like Oleksiejczuk, I think, was mixing it up a bit and making it difficult for Sharabutdin. He was landing body shots, landing, combos to the head, and I think it just made it difficult. But obviously Sharabutdin was able to get the win. And then against Antonio Tricoli, I think that was the fight where that guy had some initial success, where you're like, what the hell? Is this guy going to end up winning? And then Sharabutdin finally caught him and hurt him, knocked him out. Marc-Andrê Barrĩautt, 1-fight win streak. The last fought on May 10th of 2025. Win over Bruno Silva. He lost previously to Dustin Stoltzfus, KO'd. Lost to Joe Pyfer, KO'd. And then a split decision loss to Chris Curtis. Now, jumping into the intangibles and X factors for this fight. Sharabutdin is the home fighter, absolutely. He only fights in Abu Dhabi because I think it's the only place he's actually able to, because he is missing one eye. And some pressure here for him. Not only is it like his hometown, kind of like his home crowd, if you will. He's coming off his first career loss, so I think he's going to be wanting to go out there and punch his ticket to be back in the win column. He's going to want to get a win pretty badly. Red flags is just potentially a strength mismatch going up against Marc-Andrê Barrĩautt. And when I mean strength, I don't mean like in a specific discipline. I just mean like actual strength as a human being. Because Marc-Andrê Barrĩautt does powerlifting and shit. He's very strong. Now, on the other side, Marc-Andrê Barrĩautt is not the home fighter, but he has some pressure to get a win and stay in that win column. Marc-Andrê Barrĩautt is 35. He's not that old for middleweight. So I think if he's really trying to do something here and get back in the rankings at some point, he's going to have to get a win here. So there's a lot of pressure there. Ultimately, guys, I have to go with Sharabutdin in this fight. I just think that Shara is so well-rounded on the feet. I think he'll be able to negate some of the pressure that Marc puts towards him by just using his footwork, staying on the outside, using those long-range attacks with his legs. Because he's so good with those kicks, I feel like he'll be able to land from a far distance. And I think he'll just have Marc-Andrê Barrĩautt guessing quite a bit. I don't see him actually KOing Barrĩautt, even though I probably should. I just feel like Barrĩautt is like a bit of a crafty vet in that regard, where if you don't catch him with like a power, I think he gets knocked out by punches, overhands and things like that. Not necessarily like a kick, but it's very likely that happens. I'm just thinking that Sharabutdin gets a decision, and I got a 3 out of 5 confidence on that. The next fight on the card, we got Bryce Mitchell. I say it like Gene Silva now. Ever since Gene Silva said, fuck Bryce, I can't fucking unhear him saying Bryce Mitchell's name. Versus Nurmagomedov. So taking a look at Bryce, 30 years old, 5'10", 70-inch reach. He's got the 5'10" is 70 inches, so he's got a reach and height that match. Not great for boxing. 135 pounds this time. Usually has always fought 145, but he's cutting down. So that's a big and very interesting element to this fight. 17-3 record for Bryce Mitchell, 8-3 in the UFC. Nurmagomedov, on the other hand, 33 years old, so a little bit older, 5'8", same reach, 70 inches, and 18-4 record, 7-3 record in the UFC. Styles for this fight. So Bryce Mitchell is great wrestling, guys, as we all know. Very, very good top control, top control and pressure. Once Bryce gets his hands on somebody, he usually has the ability to not only get them to the ground, but keep them there, outside of the Ilia Toporias of the world and the Gene Silvas, right? Now, I would say Bryce actually has some decent boxing. In his last fight, even against Gene Silva, dude, Bryce went toe-to-toe with Gene Silva and Ilia Topuria, and people want to shit on him and his striking. He actually landed shots on both guys. And now he's not the most powerful of strikers, but he still was landing on both guys a lot more than other fighters have. So I think he does have decent boxing. I think he's got good timing, and he's a bit of a tricky southpaw in that regard. But also he's got 53% of his wins by submission. So he is going to, once he gets a guy to the ground, if he can't get the ground and pound off, he's going to try to look for submissions if he can. Also has one of the only twister submissions in UFC history. Some weaknesses for Bryce is he's not the greatest striker like all around. I think he's got decent boxing, but not as good of a striker, obviously, as his foe in Said Nurmagomedov, who I have put here as a strength. Great striker. 33% of his wins by sub, 22% of his wins by KO. And some weaknesses that I have for Said is that he gasses out in fights. Like usually in fights against a pressure style fighter like Bryce, he tends to gas out and wilt towards the end of the fight. Now, what I think could happen, guys, you got Said Nurmagomedov. He does have those submission threats. He does have a very good guillotine choke. So that is something to keep in mind as you're thinking about these fights. Now, momentum check, both guys coming off of a loss. Bryce lost to Gene Silva on April 12, 2025. Previously won over Kron Gracie. He lost to Josh Emmett by KO. I actually was at UFC 296 when that happened live, and it was very scary. Like the entire area around us was quiet. Like it was scary to see him KO'd that way. Dan Ige win prior to that. So also, if you look at Bryce's record, he has wins over some sneaky good fighters. He has wins over Edson Barboza, where it was it wasn't a fluke. It was a 15-minute, fight where he won dominantly, in my opinion. And then I think, obviously he fought Ilia Topuria, so he has that in-cage experience against some of the greatest fighters in the UFC. There was one other fighter. Oh, okay. Yeah. So Bryce had that win over Edson Barboza previously, but then sneaky win on Bryce Mitchell's record, if you go back far enough. He has a win over Chepe Mariscal, Chepe is a beast. And Bryce having a win over him is definitely, it's aged very well. So yeah, if you really look at Bryce's record, he's lost to Gene Silva, a guy who people think is going to be, potentially a champ someday soon in featherweight. And then a loss to Ilia Topuria. And who the fuck did he lose to after? Oh, I'm retarded. I'm so dumb. I literally just forgot that he got KO'd by Josh Emmett, even though I said I was there. I hope that's funny. Anyways, just taking a look at their last 4 fights for Nurmagomedov, we've got a loss to Vinicius Oliveira, a win over Nguyen Gafarov, a loss to Jonathan Martinez, and then a win over... I can't even say this guy's name, so I just scribbled it. So yeah, that is their momentum. Jumping into intangibles and X factors. So Bryce is not the home fighter. He's coming off of a loss, so he's going to want to get a win, but also this is a new weight class for him. So I think he has to, there is some pressure for him to make a bit of a statement here and stake his claim. Because if Bryce is able to get a pretty dominant win in this fight, he could be very close to ranked material at bantamweight and then start, staking his claim for moving up that in that division. But a red flag for me is I haven't seen him fight at bantamweight yet, and so I don't know how that weight cut will affect him. Yeah, I just don't know how that change of 10 pounds and going down in weight versus up will affect his strength and just overall fight style and game. Who knows? What if this losing this 10 pounds makes Bryce a fucking marauder? He starts KOing guys. We'll have to see. Now, Nurmagomedov, I said, is the home fighter. He needs to get a win to bounce back from his previous loss, although Vinicius Oliveira is looking to be another highly touted prospect. Red flags for me are just his gas tank, right? And then also I think he's going to have a mismatch against Bryce strength-wise. I think Bryce is super strong. And another variable, though, is that Nurmagomedov's never been finished, ever, in his career, based on what I saw, at least. So that's a variable to consider because you have to think, okay, if Bryce gets him down like this, it's going to be hard for him to get a submission off, I think. Guys, I'm going with Bryce Mitchell. I wanted to go Nurmagomedov, but I feel like Said Nurmagomedov has kind of let me down in some of these fights where, in some of the fights where you think he should easily win, he doesn't. And I think I have this vision of him being on his back, in the octagon. I just have this vision, when I think about Said, I think about, some flashy striking, but then him being on his back or being in the stance where he's got the knuckles on the ground, right? And he's trying to get up and there's a guy just latched onto him. So that is mainly what I'm thinking is that Bryce is going to have a very strong grappling style, going to get his hands around him, get him down to the ground. And in a lot of cases where Bryce gets takedowns, like that's where you see his strength. He just gets that takedown and he holds the guy there. So, I mean, people forget, man, he got Topuria down and held him down for quite some time, especially for Ilia Topuria. Now, yeah, I think that he'll be able to do it. And I think that it's going to be a decision. I think that Bryce is going to just have a lot of control time, a lot of takedowns, probably going to be a boring fight. I hope it's not, because I fuck with Bryce Mitchell. I think Bryce Mitchell he is a dog. Like, he will fight. But I just think that this is a type of matchup where Saeed's going to be so worried about that takedown that it's likely that Bryce is just getting that control and, getting top position and just kind of holding it there. But we'll see what happens. Co-main event finally, guys. So we got Petr No Mercy Yan versus Marcus McGhee. So Petr Yan, 32 years old, 5'7", 67-inch reach, 135 pounds, 18-5 record, and a 10-4 record in the UFC, and also number 9 on Lucas Tracy's GOAT list. Can't forget that. Now, Marcus McGhee, on the other hand, Arizona stand up, 35 years old, 5'8", 69-inch reach, 10-1 record, 4-0 in the UFC. Marcus McGhee fights out of the MMA lab, only 20 minutes away from where I live. Styles makes fights for Petr Yan and Marcus McGhee. So Petr Yan's a master of boxing in Russia. He's an amazing striker. A good ground game as well. I think that Petr Yan, he can mix in the wrestling when he needs to. Now, when I say good ground game, I'm not saying against Merc, right? But I'm saying he has a good enough ground game to be scrappy in those grappling situations, scrambling as well. So I think that is something to call out for Petr. 39% of his wins by KO, more wins by decision for No Mercy Petr Yan. But what I would say a weakness for Petr is I don't really think he has a weakness in his actual, he has one of the best boxing styles, the way that he keeps the hands high guard but is able to still throw shots. I love watching him box. I just think he's a victim of losing close fights. I think he gets in these close matchups where, because he's a slow starter, he almost gives his opponents an edge because he is slow at starting, allows them to score points early. So that is just the only thing I would call out. Now, Marcus McGhee, on the other hand, strengths for him, 80% of his wins by KO. He's a great striker, so very crispy striking on the feet. Some weaknesses is just he's got limited professional experience and he's got very limited UFC experience. Taking a look at their momentum. So we got a 2-fight win streak for Yan. 11-23-24 is when he last fought. Got that win over Figueiredo. We really had a great performance there. A win prior to that over Song Yadong. I had picked him in that fight. A lot of people didn't. Thought Petr No Mercy Yan is a beast. Lost to Merab, and then a questionable loss to Sean O'Malley. I know a lot of people feel he didn't lose that fight. I feel I see why Sean got the nod because of the knee up the middle and the blood. I can see, but I will say this, guys. When I first watched Yan and O'Malley, I was hanging out with some people. Someone bet on Sean O'Malley, and I was like, dude, as the thing was being read, the results, I'm like, dude, I don't see how O'Malley won that, because at the time I thought Yan had done more than O'Malley, but then rewatching it, obviously, you see that knee, it's scored a lot. It's just weird how judges score shit, guys, because some judges make it big deal, some don't, right, from a damage perspective. Now, Marcus McGhee, on the other hand, 6-fight win streak, last fought November 16th, 2024. He's got a win over Jonathan Martinez, a win over Gaston Bolaños, a win over JP Bays, poor guy, JP. And then if you know, you know. And then a win over Journey Newsom, I think his last name was. So a couple, though, Journey Newsom, don't know him, but know the rest of those guys. So it's not like Marcus McGhee's had completely shit opponents, right? JP Bays lost a ton of fights, but he was a good fighter. He's fun to watch. Intangibles and X factors. Petr Yan, not the home fighter, because I don't think that Petr Yan is Muslim. I think he's Christian. So I don't think he gets that same, even though he's, guys, it's all, and I hate to do this, but I do feel because it says that Petr Yan's an Orthodox Christian. So not all the Russian fighters get that home court advantage. I think that home court advantage tends to apply to those that are Muslim. Look at Belal Muhammad. The guy's from the United States, but when he goes to Abu Dhabi, he's treated like a king. He definitely gets a little bit more of a nod if you will. Not necessarily a nod, but he gets more, I think, fans respect because of that. And so in this fight, you don't really have that on either side. The pressure for Petr Yan is that there is a lot of pressure for him. He needs to get a win. He's got a high spot in the rankings. He needs to keep his high spot in the rankings. Number 2, I think, going up against number 12 and Marcus McGhee. So there's a lot of risk for little reward here for Petr Yan. And if we're going to use the Sean O'Malley fight as a case study, same thing happened. He was number 2 or 3. No, number 1, I think. And he gives O'Malley that shot and loses. So that's something to consider here. Now, on the other side, I don't think there's a lot of pressure for Marcus McGhee. He's 35 years old, 10-1. He has fought decent guys, but I don't think he's expected to win this fight on paper. So there's not a ton of pressure for him. It's like the Sean Strickland Adesanya situation or Juliana Pena versus Nunez. You're not expected to win. Red flags for Marcus McGhee. He's 35 at bantamweight, and then also just his strength of schedule compared to that of Petr Yan. Ultimately, guys, I have to go Petr, no merci, Petr Yan. I just think that Petr Yan is one of the best fighters, right? I don't rate him as highly as Lucas Tracy does, but I think he's an amazing fighter. And I feel like he is just going to be too much for Marcus McGhee on the feet. Marcus McGhee is a great striker in and of himself, but he's not going to outstrike Petr Yan, in my opinion. I think this goes to decision. I think that I have a 4 out of 5 confidence that it's going to be a decision win for no merci, Petr Yan. Finally, guys, we're an hour and 20 in here. I'm going to cut it down, but yeah, we've got Robert, Bobby Knuckles, the Reaper, Whittaker versus Reinier de Ridder. I call him Reindeer because that's how his name is spelled to me. Both these guys 34. Robert Whittaker's 6 foot tall, 73.5-inch reach. So that's what I'm saying, guys. He's got 2.5-inch reach length above his height. No, he doesn't. It's 1.5. I can't do math. Anyways, 185 pounds, 26-8 record with a 17-6 record in the UFC. Reinier de Ridder, RDR, 34, as I mentioned, 6'4", 78-inch reach, 20-2 record, a 3-0 record in the UFC. Styles makes fights. Robert Whittaker, strengths, very slick, powerful striker, got that karate-based style, great takedown defense, at least from what we've seen. Not against Khamzat Chimaev. Khamzat doesn't count. A weakness is he was submitted rather quickly against Chimaev. Now, that submission threat is still there with Reinier de Ridder, but I do think there's a bit of a difference in the style of that takedown that is going to play in favor to Robert Whittaker. And I'll get into that. Reinier de Ridder, strengths for him, as we know, an amazing grappler, great clinch striker, great clinch game. We saw that against Bo Nickel. He really tuned Bo up in the clinch. One of the best wins. And also it's a sneaky win that I picked Reinier to win that one, actually. A huge underdog, and he ended up pulling it off. One of my favorite ones that I've picked. A weakness for Reinier. Very open on the feet, bad in pocket exchanges. He is not a good boxer, guys, in my opinion. From what I've seen, GM3, Gerald Meerschaert, was tuning him up on the feet. And Gerald Meerschaert's a bit of a tricky striker, but he's not necessarily I think if you put GM3 against Robert Whittaker fucking beats the shit out of him. So that's just a little bit of math. But what I would say is when you think about Khamzat's takedowns, this is one thing I want to talk about. Khamzat's takedowns not only happen, the guy shot a takedown from half, he was at the center marker of the octagon, and he shot a takedown against Whittaker. And Whittaker did great defending the initial part of the takedown. The problem that you have with Chimaev is his chain wrestling. As Chimaev dives in on that takedown against Whittaker, he's instantly on the hips and transitioning into another, this is the chain wrestling. He's just going into another wrestling transition. And I think at that point, Whittaker was already, dead to rights because Chimaev's got the fucking grip of a goddamn chimpanzee and couldn't get out of it. I don't see that being a issue against Reinier de Ridder. Reinier de Ridder does not shoot takedowns in that same way, and he does not chain wrestle in the way Chimaev does. So that's just something I want to call out. One other thing to call out, though, we're going to get into that in the next slide. I'll get to that next. Momentum check for these guys. Robert Whittaker has one loss. Last fought 10-26-24, lost to Khamzat Chimaev. got a win over Ikram Aliskerov before that, a win over Paulo Costa before that, and then there was one more win that he had that I forgot to put in here, so my apologies. I'll get that info right now. Lost to Dricus du Plessis. There we go. So that is something to consider there. And then looking at Reinier, we got a last 4-fight win streak. Last fought May 2nd, 2025. Win over Bo Nickel, a win over Kevin Holland before that, both in 2025. A win over Gerald Mearshart before that, and then a win over a random person that is in another promotion. Jumping into the intangibles and X factors. Neither guy's the home fighter here. Robert Whittaker has a lot of pressure because he needs a win to hold his spot in the rankings. A red flag for Robert Whittaker is that he was just submitted. And then one other red flag I want to call out, and it might not be a red flag, but going back and watching tape on Whittaker versus Chimaev, Whittaker he always has a karate style stance, if you will. But the last fight, it was very prominent. Robert Whittaker's 6 feet tall, so he's not the tallest guy in the world, but the way he had his base so spread out, I think it could be advantageous from a balance standpoint if someone's shooting a takedown. But it worried me seeing that again because Reinier does very good with his length, right? He's very long in the arms. He's very good at just snatching up like a single leg and then getting his opponent to the ground. It's what he did to Kevin Holland. So I worry about that aspect with Whittaker having that very wide karate style stance. But a variable I have for Whittaker is he's really only lost to former champs, current champ, or someone that people think is going to be the champ. So his recent losses are only to the best fighters that exist. And Reinier might be that. We still are kind of seeing because although he has a pretty heavy record in terms of wins, they're over guys that we just don't have as much of a litmus test for. I think you could always see skill in one championship for sure. If I was to compare skill set of different organizations, I think one championship definitely is one of those promotions that I would tout higher than the others. But just a little bit of an example for you guys. Rachnio came over from one championship. I think he was 13-2 when he got to the UFC. He went on a crazy losing streak after coming to the UFC. So that just goes to show you sometimes it's not apples to apples, obviously when you're coming over to the best organization that exists. Now, Reinier, a lot of pressure for him to not only get the win, increase his spot in the rankings. This is an amazing opportunity for him to shoot up the rankings. Red flags, though, is that his stand-up does not look good, and I worry about that a lot against a Robert Whittaker. I want to say I'm a huge fan of both these guys. I love both fighters. RDR got me after Holland. After he did that shit to Holland, he got me. I'm okay. And I got to see him get tested against GM3, which was also a big win. So yeah, and then of course, Bo Nickel, dude, of course. But I was already a fan at that point. Ultimately, guys, I worry about De Ridder's ability to handle the shots that are coming from Robert Whittaker, seeing as though lower level strikers tee off on De Ridder. I worry about him being able to withstand a teeing off session from the Reaper himself. And that's why we're going Bobby Knuckles, guys. Robert Whittaker, I pick to get the win in this fight. I see a KO. I really do. I just see, and you guys, you have to consider Robert Whittaker, although he lost to Chimaev the way he did. Chimaev, some people believe Chimaev is the next coming of Christ for MMA, okay? Others think he needs that test still, needs to still be tested. Khamzat very well could be one of the best to ever do it. And we're just watching it happen as it comes. So it's we'll have the hindsight after the fact, but I think in the moment, it's hard to equate that, right? So what I would say here is that Robert losing to Chimaev, I don't think just automatically sets him up to be beaten by De Ridder. And he's now going to have 2 full camps where he's fully focused on grappling and grappling defense. So I think that is just going to make Robert Whittaker more difficult of a matchup for De Ridder. And I think that if Whittaker shucks off every takedown, I don't see how De Ridder beats him. Whereas Whittaker could land shots on the feet. The fights always start standing. I think that Whittaker is likely to land a shot that's going to either hurt or put De Ridder out. So 4 out of 5 confidence, pretty confident. Guys, this fight card is crazy because I honestly had a lot of struggles in my picks. Like, it was hard to, I'm feeling very competitive. I've got first place in my pick tracker. I want to make sure I get this shit right. So guys, if you watch this whole thing, God bless you, because this thing is going to be long. I appreciate it so much. Thank you seriously, guys, for anyone that has subscribed, all of you who engage. I truly, truly love hearing from you guys. I love engaging with you in the comments. I'm a huge nerd and fan of this sport, just as you guys probably are. So I love to just have those comments and, go back and forth. Love to hear who you guys are betting on. Make sure you guys comment below if you have any parlays, who you're picking. I love to see who you guys pick in these parlays. I honestly root for your parlays more than my picks. There's been times where I have a pick, but I would rather see you guys win money. So comment below who you got picked for this weekend. Make sure you give this video a like, and thank you guys again. I appreciate it. I'll see you in the next video.